Haters will hate always. That's what they do. They hate.
Good afternoon there, Stuart from Cross Functional Fitness here. Thank you for joining me again. And if this is your first time, thank you for joining me today on this singular occasion. Where have you been? You've missed all the party. This is like the 26th episode or something. But anyway, last week we chatted about why strength training is an absolute necessity for runners. We discussed the fact that many runners think that they need to be more flexible, but how increasing their flexibility will actually make them slower runners due to decreased power output. There were some practical tips, we shared some training strategies, do's and don'ts. So if you're interested in becoming a runner and a better runner at that without squeezing out another 0.5% from your aerobic capacity, then maybe check out last week's episode and start doing strength training like a boss. I know what you runners are like. You think you don't need strength training. You do, believe me, you do. It'll also help you become more bulletproof, injury proof and robust, and you'll be able to beat your competitors. It's always nice to beat your competitors and your friends, right? This week's topic is functional fitness, the good, the bad and the ugly. Sounds like a new Clint Eastwood sequel, but it's not. It's becoming a phrase that's almost meaningless at this point, functional fitness. So without me blagging anymore, let's get straight into it. So functional fitness, I guess it's been a concept that's been around for maybe, 20, 25 years now. I don't know, I'm too young, didn't really know, I'm so young. But there's really been a shift. It was basically a shift from traditional bodybuilding or powerlifting style training. I know a lot of people think those two things are the same, but they're not. To more functional training, or how we thought was functional training, what's perceived to be functional. And without going into too much history of the history of functional fitness, there was a guy called Gary Gray and another guy called Vern Gambetta, and they were quite prominent in making this shift. So going from like bilateral, so in other words 2 arms or 2 legs, to unilateral training, so using single arm or single leg training. So bilateral might be like barbell, so deadlift, squats, your standard, your bench press, all those sort of things. And then using things like kettlebells and dumbbells and doing single arm or single leg work. But since then, there's been lots and lots of prominent coaches who are really big proponents of functional fitness. Vern Gambetta has obviously been about, Eric Cressy, Michael Boyle, John Rusin, Joel Seedman, just to name a few. And they're all very, very sharp guys, I'm sure. And some of them I've actually got their books and I follow their content. I've learned quite a lot from. Some of them are really clued in, except for Gambetta and Seedman. Don't mean they're not clued in, just mean I don't really pay much attention to what they're doing because, well, we'll explain later on, but check them out. It's pretty free advertising for them. So boot camps were possibly, you could argue, they were the earliest take on functional fitness, and they started getting more popular in a more mainstream way in the early 90s, 1990s, early noughties. And boot camp, it's always been a military concept, a military style of getting people in shape for combat for over 100 years. But the type of rough and tough training was then applied to everyday public as a class format, to come and basically get shouted at as an instructor, get beat up mentally and physically, train outside in the cold and wet. That was it. And people paid money hand over fist. They loved it, and they still love it. And some would argue it's not functional fitness because it's you're only doing body weight things. But there's all sorts of boot camps now. There's all sorts of takes on it, all sorts of genres. Then I guess in the early noughties, when CrossFit came along, a guy called Greg Glassman, his name is anathema in CrossFit now, but it's for other reasons that we'll not get into. But he came up with a more diverse form of functional fitness for everyday people, and he combined powerlifting, so your bench, your press and your squat, your bench press, your overhead press, your squatting, your deadlifting, all those sort of things, your power movements really, your Olympic weightlifting, your snatch, your clean and jerk, strongman activities, gymnastics, bodyweight, calisthenics, running, swimming, cycling, rowing, and more layers have kind of gradually built on top of it over the years. It's become very popular. You could say it's kind of plateauing now for worldwide membership or worldwide inclusion. But I guess during the same time, and maybe slightly earlier, functional fitness was based upon, the Gary Gray philosophy applied to sports and performance, so golf, etc. So for people who are already athletes rather than the everyday guy and the everyday girl. So that's kind of a brief synopsis and a brief history of functional fitness and where it's come from, and we're going to get into where it's at today. So the next question, I guess, is how do we define functional training or functional fitness? This is one of the biggest issues with the concept, I think, of functional training has been the inability to define it. There's not one commonly accepted definition that has stood out that everyone can agree on, and it's both a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, and we'll discuss more on that in a moment. But if you actually search on the internet for a functional fitness definition or functional training definition, lots of different things will come up. Now, I know Google will give you different search results from what I would get. It's the way they work. They kind of like to manipulate things a little bit. But in general, you're going to see a bunch of businesses probably pop up and they'll each define functional fitness according to their own take on it, which is fine. I mean, I do that as well, but it can be confusing for you, the public, or a prospective client or class member who's looking to join the gym. Maybe you've experienced functional fitness in one gym and then you come join mine and maybe it's something different here. Maybe the way I do things is slightly different, or maybe the exercises I highly rate are different to the ones at your previous gym or coach rated very highly. Of course, one thing might be consistent, hopefully, is that we all despise the Smith machine and the leg press. But this is basically my definition. So my definition of functional fitness is an adaptable approach to strength and fitness training that meets you where you're at, takes you where you want to go, that finds value in utilising a wide variety of movements and modalities with an emphasis on strength, mobility, and constantly improving oneself. And I threw the word oneself in at the end because that makes it sound much more authentic and official, right? They always say it oneself because it sounds proper, doesn't it? So, okay, I really haven't figured out how to settle on a really short, concise definition, but mainly because I hate committing to, one little tight definition, because I'll never be happy with it. I'm always going to try and find a way to improve it or work on it, and I'll be lying in bed some night and I'll be like, no, this is a better way to define it. But at least it's better maybe than some of the looser, broader terms that are out there defining functional fitness that basically mean nothing now and you can interpret them any way you want. At least there's some sort of a tighter definition that I have there. But I could give you an endless list of ways that I could define functional fitness and examples of what it is. Functional fitness enables you to function better, funnily enough, whether it's at being a human in general. Maybe it's doing your job more effectively or pain-free, or just being better at your sport or sports, plural, if you're into all of those sort of things. Now, this could mean different approaches for different people. This basically means that some people might have to focus more on building basic strength at first because they're weak. Hate to be the one to say it, but it's true. For others, it might mean that they need to improve their mobility, which is a combination of strength and flexibility. For someone else, it might be to improve their VO2 max. Someone else might need to train strength and power alongside each other so that they can apply the strength they're developing into force production, into rate of force production in the sense of power. Someone else might need to work on building more muscle endurance for whatever reason. So functional fitness, that's another thing actually. Whenever I said there, this means that some people have to focus, on building more strength because they're weak. Like, is it just me, or has it almost become now not a status symbol, but like a point of pride of saying, "Oh, I'm really weak." I don't know, but it almost seems like that's something that people are proud of. Like, why is it a good thing to be weak? Why is it a positive thing to be weak? Like, okay, none of us are the world's strongest man because there's going to be one world's strongest man. But what I'm saying is, surely we should take a little bit of personal pride in either developing strength or getting strong or just not being weak. I know, maybe it's just me. But functional fitness enables your joints to function better as well. So this means, restoring range of motion in your hips, your ankles, your shoulders, or wherever, your knees. So if you train certain movement patterns correctly, you can achieve this gradually, maybe even overcoming old injuries that you never thought you could, you've maybe always suffered from. Functional fitness can play a role in that as well. And functional fitness means that allowing you to play with your grandkids, pick them up, run them, carry them, swing them around, throw them about, throw them up in the air, not too high obviously, ceilings and all that. Just generally carry on living in a strong, pain-free way. It might mean being able to get up and down off the floor from playing with them without having to think twice, or get your son or daughter to help you up off the floor. For other people, it might mean building greater bone density, stronger bones. If you have a family history of osteoporosis, we dealt with that in a previous episode, but strength training, which is functional, plays a role in that. For other people, it might be, being able to use your arms and back to build all day without getting aches. So if you're a builder, joiner, plumber, whatever, you might need some functional fitness, or you could benefit from functional training. And whenever you do it correctly, it should allow you to do your job better, to do it pain-free, and to be more effective at that. Maybe you sit at a desk all day. Functional training should really give you the tools to open up your hips, work your glutes, stretch your shoulders, stretch your neck, and generally train you to take care of your own body, to perform basic maintenance on it, and to keep you pain-free as a functional, useful human. And aside from all that, I guess functional training, it's possibly most commonly applied to sports. So whether it's golf, soccer, Gaelic, hurling, rugby, hockey, baseball, cricket, darts. Are you joking? Well, not really. I'm sure there's someone out there in the functional fitness realm that is attempting to apply functional fitness to improving darts athletes. How to hold your pint, or something like that. If you want to send in hate mail, any darts players out there, info at crossfunctionalfitness.co.uk. I'd love to hear from you. A definition by Michael Boyle in his book, New Functional Training for Sport, 2nd edition, which I have. It's quite a good book, quite interesting. Mr. Boyle equates function to purpose. So when it comes to training, functional training is purposeful training, he argues. And then he references Gambetta and Gray and their work in 2002 by saying that functional training programs need to introduce controlled amounts of instability so that the athlete must react in order to regain their own stability. So this definition is quite sports specific, quite sports orientated, and unfortunately this definition can really open a can of worms, and unfortunately involves bossy balls, Swiss balls, and all sorts of other ridiculous training approaches. Now, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, give him his proper title. I've got a couple of his books as well, but he makes an excellent point whenever he says that the term functional fitness is one of the most misapplied concepts in exercise science. The fact is, virtually all exercises can be functional depending on the context. I think this is a great quote, this is a great take on what we're trying to say today. Context is key. If something improves your functional capacity, then it's functional training or functional fitness. Functional capacity, what is that? That is basically the ability to perform useful movements successfully. So if you train that, you're going to become more successful at it. So for the vast majority of the population, getting stronger should really be the starting point of becoming more functional, of functional training. Unless you already happen to be gruesomely strong already, then you can maybe start playing about with other things and focusing on unilateral movements. You might not like me saying this, but most of us aren't strong enough. I know I said it earlier, but it really should be our starting point when it comes to trying to be more functional. It makes everything else and every other training program, every other philosophy much easier to execute. Whether it's circuits or running, swimming, HIIT training, cycling, your Peloton, gymnastics, spin, body pump, or whatever. It just makes it all so much easier. And that then begs the question, well, how strong is strong enough? I hear that question sometimes. And strong enough really depends on lots of stuff. Your age, your genetic ability, risk versus reward, your height, your weight, your goals, your injury history. But if you put it this way, if you can deadlift 2.5 times your body weight, I would say you're strong enough. Or if you can back squat 1.75 times your body weight, below parallel for reps, I'd say you're strong enough. If you can bench press 1 to 1.5 times your body weight or do 10 pull-ups, yeah, I'd say you're strong enough for most people. Now, you might not ever need to be that strong, but you also might. You also might be strong enough if you're lifting less than these ratios that I've picked out. I'm not saying those are hard and fast rules, that you're not strong unless you get to exactly not 1.75 times your body weight for squats. But you could be strong enough and be able to do less than that. Again, it depends on all the earlier factors that I've listed. But for most people, between the ages of about 20 to 60, men and women, all these things will make you strong enough. I would say that you're strong enough. But don't forget, the more strength you build now, the more you have to hold on to whenever you're an older dude or an older lady. I heard a great thought the other day that people don't end up in care homes because they get old. They end up in care homes because they get too weak to look after themselves. They can't get up and down off the toilet. They need help getting up out of a chair, or can't climb stairs, or can't get out of bed, or bath unassisted. These aren't just the result of old age. These are the result of lack and a loss of strength. So for most people, functional training initially should or would probably look like this: building strength, just getting stronger than you currently are. Then you can start playing about with all sorts of other things. So, as promised, we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of functional training or functional fitness. First of all, the good. So what is good about functional training or functional fitness? Some approaches to functional fitness are really commendable. The concept, it intends to improve your ability to perform your sport or become a better human, generally speaking. Michael Boyle also makes the point in his book that I mentioned earlier. Functional training programs train movements, not muscles. And this is a really important point, and it's one I think that's really sensible, and it's one I think most sensible thinking people in the functional fitness world should agree upon. If you're creating balance between push and pull, rotation, extension, flexion, it seems like a really sensible and really smart approach to creating stronger muscles and healthy joints. So first of all, sports performance, I kind of get the point. A functional approach to sports performance can help some athletes, but unless they're already strong, I would argue that it's going to be a waste of their time. In fact, for younger athletes, for example, teens and early 20s, I would say they're much better spending their time simply getting stronger, doing strength training, being patient with it, taking it gradually, not rushing it, building real strength, instead of doing box jumps, one leg squats, high step ups with weights and things like that, or other types of, those are the more sensible functional training exercises that are quite popular. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, they have their place, but I'm not saying that you should never do those. I'm saying that they do have their place, especially when you get stronger, but unless you've really become a really strong guy or a really strong girl, you're probably not spending your valuable time in the most appropriate way. But I do get the logic. The kind of thought process goes, if you're running or performing pretty much any sport, you're spending the vast majority of your time on one leg, so it makes sense to train yourself on one leg. Having said that, if you're performing the basic exercises to make you stronger, so your back squat, your bench press, your deadlift, your overhead press, your pull-ups, etc., do you not think that your balance is going to become significantly better when you bring your squat from the barbell, which is 20 kg, to 150 kg, for example? Do you not think that process is going to develop much better balance? How can it not? You wouldn't be able to squat to depth or execute the movement correctly if your ability to balance didn't improve alongside your strength. And then the next point is injury reduction. So there's an argument that goes that functional training helps reduce injury rate, and I would agree that that's a good goal to have. Given that functional training came from the sports medicine world, rehabilitation and all of that, it does make sense that functional training has a place in preventing injury. But again, building strength will help to do this, whether it's with a barbell, a kettlebell, a dumbbell, or a latex band. It just so happens that the most ergonomic piece of equipment in the gym for building strength is a barbell. It has yet to be improved upon. Performing heavy deadlifts is going to give you stronger, thicker hamstrings. The muscle belly is going to be bigger and thicker and stronger. so they're not going to tear as easily. They're going to be able to absorb more force, and performing heavy deadlifts and building them up is going to give you a stronger back, which will make it much harder to damage. If you think of it this way, if you add more muscle to your skeleton, it's going to be supported better against external forces that are going to come against it. Another positive aspect of functional training is the attention to detail a lot of the time that comes with it. So it should be highly commended compared to others. Some people don't really care about the details, but a lot of trainers, the ones who kind of train with bossy balls, the bossy ball squatters or the boot camp drill sergeants, they might not really care about details. They don't really care if your elbows are sticking out at 90 degrees when you're doing push-ups, or they don't really care if you're going to fall over and crack your ankles because you're doing squats in a bossy ball or stupid stuff like that. But in general, the practitioners of functional fitness care deeply about movement, and their attention to detail is something that I think you can't help but be impressed by. They'll look at the details, like are your heels in the floor when you're squatting, or your knees caving in, what are they doing? But they'll also see the bigger picture too. They'll look at you as a whole and how you move and how it all fits together to produce a quality squat or whatever it is you're doing, especially in a one-to-one training session where they can really optimize this and enhance it. So in the larger classes, I guess this isn't as easy to do. Another thing that is good about functional training is the variation. It enables joints to be worked in a more balanced way. So traditional functional training approaches tend to include a wide variety of exercises, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, I guess. But over time as a trainer, you start to see that less is more. So like for new clients and trainees, focusing on maybe 3 or 4 exercises and getting better at them is a much better approach than picking 20 or 30 or 10 or 20. While variety, it can stimulate the mind, it can keep things interesting. It can also confuse you if you haven't mastered them yet. So paying attention to the details is really important, and fewer exercises can sometimes allow this to happen. So just mastering the squat, just focusing on the squat. Try and move on to the other variations later on. One benefit of choosing a good variety of exercises obviously is that you're more likely to get a good balance of movements, which tends to work well for your joints. So like we said earlier, your push, your pull, your extension, your flexion, your rotation, your carries, all those sort of things. You're less likely to get an overuse injury if you're performing a smart program with a decent amount of variety. So that is kind of concludes. I'm sure there are other good things about functional fitness, but those kind of highlight the main aspects, I think. So that begs the question, what is bad about functional fitness? Again, I guess it depends on your definition of it, but there are several negative aspects of it. For example, if you're so focused on unilateral training, so like we said before, single arm, single leg stuff, but you neglect to build or train strength, or top end strength, as many people will call it, then I would argue that is a bad aspect of functional fitness. Or if you become a burpee queen, so you're always doing like things like burpees because you think they're functional, but you neglect to become strong, I would say that's another negative aspect of functional training. Okay, you're getting better at burpees, but you're also probably getting weaker because you're not training strength, or you're maybe not strong to start with. But it's not bad, but you know what I mean? You're kind of missing the bigger picture. So if your overall strength is neglected, your performance as a human, not just as an athlete, yes, as a human, is going to suffer. You're going to become a worse human, not a better one. I don't mean that from a character standpoint. I'm sure you're a lovely person, but you're going to become weaker, and your body's going to suffer. So don't do that, is my advice. Functional fitness or functional training, it isn't as trainable as, say barbell training, for example. So we're going to get into this a little bit more, but basically some people don't consider barbell training as functional. We're going to explain that later on, but say it isn't. Just for the sake of argument, say barbell training isn't functional because you're using 2 legs or 2 arms. So if you're doing dumbbell lunges or kettlebell split squats and you've worked your way up to holding 10 kg in each hand, then you keep going until you're able to do 20 kg in each hand, pretty soon you'll get to the point where your grip is going to become an issue. You'll even get to the point where training with such a heavy load could potentially start to flare up tendonitis in your knees. Your grip will start being challenged so much that you'll only be able to think about holding them and gripping them for dear life, rather than your movement, your technique while you're doing the exercise. you'd eventually reach a point that you can't really go any further from a practical standpoint. When you compare it to barbell training, for example, deadlifts, say, back squats, etc., you can keep progressing and training this way until the day that you die. And I know maybe some people don't like that, but it's more trainable. So some bad aspects of functional training, I would say you're never going to get as strong. It's quite simple as that. If you're doing single leg, single arm things, you're never going to get as strong overall as if you're doing barbell things. If you're doing training 2 legs on the floor, 2 arms on the bar, and I would like a discussion about that with anybody, because it's just a fact. It's true. So that leaves us with the ugly side of functional training, functional fitness. And I guess it's been well documented already on YouTube. If you go into YouTube, and I could just end this discussion here and put a link in the show notes about a YouTube video of functional fitness fails, and you would laugh your ass off. But I think you know the kind of thing I'm talking about. People doing stupid stuff like squatting on bossy balls. I've already referenced 1 leg squats, balancing on top of a kettlebell, or doing bench press while lying with your legs off the ground. There's all sorts of stuff. Like, generally, if it involves a ball, it's probably not going to end well. Now, there's some good uses of a Swiss ball and a bossy ball, but those are not the things that are useful. And if you're currently into that sort of stuff, you can feel free to do it in your own time. Go for it. Video it so we can all see and get amusement from it. But if you're in my gym or you're under my supervision, it's just ridiculous. We're not doing that. We're just not doing it. And I get it, sometimes it's cool to watch videos, I guess, and go, whoa, look what this circus acrobat can do. I mean, I love the circus. Who doesn't? Who doesn't love the circus? Well, maybe, if you've got a fear of clowns or you're an animal rights activist, I guess those are kind of things that, negative drawbacks from circuses. But we're reviewing functional fitness, not circuses here. So, the circus is just cool though, isn't it? Like, some of the crazy acrobatic movements that those guys can do, it's just breathtaking. It really is impressive. But I just don't want them done in my gym. I just don't want you doing it, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else either, or calling it functional fitness. You're giving functional fitness a bad name. Okay. So, do you want to know some other dumb ideas that I've seen dressed up as functional training? One of them is not using collars in the bar so the weights slide off. And I'm not kidding. Like, people will do a deadlift and then they'll get their, they'll tilt the bar one way, drop a plate off, tilt the bar that way and drop the other plate off. So they just basically don't put collars on. Now, I see accidents. Accidents thankfully don't happen very often, but generally when accidents happen in the gym, it's because the collars aren't on and the plates slide off the side of the bar. So that's not a very smart thing to do, and it's not functional. The other one is putting a load of barbell behind your neck and then another barbell locked out in your hands overhead and doing squats. Like, I can think of nothing more dumb than that, but people do it. Look it up. Doing somersaults with kettlebells or barbells. Seriously, people do that. And, haters are going to say that, sorry, not haters, but people are going to say that I'm a hater because I can't do it. And it's not just because I don't do it, I can't do it, that I'm a hater, but I just think it's so stupid. Doing box jumps from a bossy ball, like standing on a bossy ball and trying to jump on top of a box, like, just don't. Doing battle ropes from a bossy ball. Generally, if it involves a bossy ball, there's very few good uses of bossy balls. Put it that way. And then, whenever you get over all the stupidity of the exercises that people dream up to how hurt themselves and break their ankles, another ugly side of functional fitness is whenever people, maybe get into it a little bit and they get a little bit snobby. Say even the ones that are doing like CrossFit, or they're doing, I don't know, just like Michael Boyle's take on things, or some of the other unilateral exercises, single arm, single leg. The rest, they're doing functional fitness, but the rest of us commoners, we're just doing, fitness. Everybody, who gets into any specific form of fitness finds something that gets them into the, exploring more about what their own body can do, and everybody has a fitness journey, to use the old cliche. But what's kind of funny is the fact that many proponents of functional fitness will see overhead pressing with a kettlebell as a functional exercise, but they will automatically dismiss overhead pressing with a barbell and call it non-functional. I mean, we've already explained it. It comes back to context. It comes back to definitions. If you aren't sure what you're training for, what the context is, or you're not sure what someone else is training for, then you've no way of judging, you've no way of knowing whether what they're doing is functional or not. or what you're doing is functional or not if you don't know what the purpose is. Purposeful. Remember, Michael Boyle said purposeful. So if it doesn't have a purpose, it's not functional. And I hate to be the one who said it, but many people just like being weak because getting strong takes time and effort. It's much easier to drop the barbell, grab some lighter kettlebells and do some functional leg work, like, you know, instead of just adding more weight to the bar and trying to lift just a little bit heavier than the last session. Sometimes people just like to use functional fitness as a bit of a guise, bit of a mask to get out of having to try so hard. And I'm just saying it like it is. It's true. It is true. And functional fitness sometimes just seems interesting, but it's just actually easier if we're honest about it. So there you go. That was a quick lesson on functional training and functional fitness, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hopefully it's cleared up some common misconceptions, and hopefully I didn't add to them or any confusion. But maybe you now know what constitutes functional fitness, functional exercise, and what constitutes as stupidity. But listen here, my fitness business is called cross-functional fitness. I get it. It's ironic that I'm having a bit of a go at it today, but I'm a big fan of functional fitness whenever it's understood and applied correctly and sensibly. In one sense, I kind of regret calling it cross-functional fitness because, well, one, it's a bit of a mouthful. Number two, it can be difficult for people to remember, believe it or not. And number three, functional fitness has become so diluted, the term and the phrase. If it's not misunderstood, I feel like people are surprised, whenever they see our training approach or if they start to inquire. But, maybe it's a good idea. You live and you learn. I'll be better at branding things next time. But maybe it's a good thing because maybe I can elaborate more and explain why we do what we do and our approach to training here. But yeah, if you have any questions about any of that, do send them in to info@crossfunctionalfitness.co.uk and I will be glad to answer your queries or complaints.
This place is freaking awesome!
It's that time again. It's joke of the week time. You ready? I asked my date to meet me at the gym today. She didn't show up. That's when I knew we weren't going to work out.
FBI, open up!
And that is the end of another show. End of another week too. Thank you for keeping me company. Speaking of functional fitness, we have some brand new classes available and there are still a few spots free if you'd like to grab one, and there's not a bossy ball in sight. Well, there is actually, because I bought one years ago and I have used it a handful of times and it's up on the shelf now, so you might see it but we'll not be using it. But you can choose, whichever class you want to try. We have total body toning, atomic and power. And total body toning is a combination of strength, cardio and core. Atomic is exclusively HIIT cardio, no weights involved. And power is all about getting stronger than you are right now at your own pace and being patient and building up gradually. I'll pop the link to the class in the show notes and you can find out more. If you have any questions, do drop me an email at info@crossfunctionalfitness.co.uk or message me through social media, any social media platforms. Have a great weekend and remember to train today so you can be stronger tomorrow.